stream didn't start like it was supposed to. That was entirely my fault because I didn't push a button. It's a button, people. It's a button. So now we should be live on YouTube. We are live on Rumble. We are live on X, TikTok, Twitch, Kick, everywhere that you could ever want to be to listen to Spear of Destiny. Dun dun dun. Ah. I continue to click buttons to make sure that everything is where it is supposed to be. So, let's talk a little bit about what happened in our last reading. We found out that the professor, the medicine man, the doctor, has managed to go ahead and get himself turned into, shall we just call it a werewolf? That's basically what he is. He's a werewolf. He's not actually a werewolf. He's just a wolf in clothing. Just in clothing. And so then our intrepid, I can't say a trio, a quadro, a septuple. There's a lot of them. Our heroes. That's what we will call them. Our heroes did everything they could to destroy the Spear of Destiny. Okay, it's a Spear of Chaos. Shh, quiet you. So they tried to destroy the Spear of Chaos and were wildly unsuccessful. They had tried to burn it in a fire already. That didn't work. They tried to drop it to the bottom of a lake. Well, that didn't work so well either. And so now they don't know what to do. There is a plan, but we do not yet know what that plan is. We'll find out soon. So hopefully you guys are ready for another fun-filled adventure here together as we enjoy all of what the book has to offer us. You know you like it. You know you want it. Wherever you happen to be, I hope you are enjoying yourself and having yourself a wonderful day. It's a little warm here today. We got up to 80 something degrees. It was like a week ago that we had snow. So, Tim's body, not ready to deal with all of that. But what are you gonna do, right? You have to find a way to survive it all. And so that's what we will do. I've got a fan in the window. I've got a fan on behind me. I have hopefully everything that I need in order to survive this heat wave. Before we get started, it should be up on X. Hold on, let me go look. Yeah, it does say that it is live. Here, let me do this. Copy the link. And come on, paste. And paste the link. That is where it should be on X right now. If for some reason you can't find it there, well, I don't know quite what to tell you, because it should be there. That's my story. Oh, that's my story. I ain't got a witness, and you know I can't prove it, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So, that said, our author is out and available for you to chat with on YouTube. So, if you've ever wanted to ask questions, you wanted to know more about what kind of book is the Spear of Destiny? What happened to the Spear of Chaos? Why didn't we read more about that? Well, I'll tell you, you didn't go out and pick up the book, did you? Did you? No, you didn't. That's what you get. That's what you get when you mess with the warrior. I got nothing, guys. I just got absolutely nothing. But it's okay. We'll have ourselves some fun. So, wherever you happen to be, if you happen to be in a warm climate, get yourself a cold drink. If you happen to be in a cold climate, get yourself a hot drink. Sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we dive into another evening of Spear of Destiny, finding Bucephalus's neighbor. No, that's not the book. Why do I keep on getting the book wrong? I just don't understand. I don't understand. Okay, I know what I'm doing. Really, guys. Professional broadcaster. Um, professional streamer. There we go. Professional streamer. All right, everyone. Well, let's enjoy. One last housekeeping note for all of you. I do record each of the chapters, which means if you have missed any of Spear of Destiny, it's available on the YouTube or Rumble channels. YouTube.com/@SirArminius. Rumble, search Spear of Destiny. I don't think they make it as easy over there. It also means that, unfortunately, I won't be chatting with you as the stream goes on. Well, we're in the middle of chapters. I will be happy to speak with you in between chapters. But while chapters are going on, not so much, because I'm recording it, and nobody wants to listen to that in a recording. Well, let me do something really quick. I was blowing hot air out. Now I'm going to pull cool air in because it's dropped below 70 degrees, which means it is absolutely cooler outside than the 87 degrees it is in my office right now. One day I will get air conditioning. But until that day comes, we will survive. All right, everyone. Here we go, jumping into Spear of Destiny. 7 Storms, May 3rd, 1986. Puffy clouds made shadows and sunshine skate along the ground. A light breeze chilled the group. The wind made jackets necessary as the group of young people prepared to leave early on the morning of May the 3rd, 1986. Mary Lou took heed of the chilly morning. She had needed to sit on her pack to zip it up due to the extra coat she'd stuffed in it. Nope, Kenneth shook his head. That's not going to work. He was staring thoughtfully at the trunk of Brian's car as Mary Lou tried to squeeze the second bag in on top of her tent and blankets. What's not going to work? She asked him. The trunk lid swayed as the car shook with her efforts. Kenneth grabbed the trunk lid and lifted it to keep it from falling on her head. He pointed at her luggage as she shoved harder. Stop! All that isn't going to fit like that. Sure it will. She eyed it and sighed at the futility of continuing to try to force the issue. You're probably right, though. Any ideas? Do you need all that? Kenneth asked and gave her a dubious look. We're only going to be gone a few days. I've only got one small bag and a bedroll. That's everything I need. I go camping all the time. I use all this stuff, Ken, Mary Lou protested. Not like this, you don't, he told her. You camp out of your car, which isn't real camping. Our trip will require a hike in rough country and set up in a place that's in bad shape after the eruption last year. I'm guessing that you don't have a clue what you're up against, do you? Well, no, she admitted. Uh-huh. He nodded and waved her off. You go over there and get familiar with the map. You are going to have to help drive. I'll fix this. Mary Lou could hear Kenneth muttering under his breath as he proceeded to pull everything back out that she had just loaded. He arranged it all neatly where it would fit. Diane and Brian hunched over a huge wrinkled map of the United States with a stack of smaller state maps plopped on the hood of the professor's car. The professor was lying down in the open hatchback with his head on a tent. The coyote was with him. Professor Holderman found himself stuck as a wolf again with the close proximity of the Spear of Chaos, which had to go with them. Hey, buddy. Mary Lou rubbed the coyote's ears fondly in passing. She smiled at his friendly yip and waved to the professor. Hi, Medicine Bear. This trip is going to take us probably about 5 or 6 days. Tops? Mary Lou asked Diane. She wedged in beside Brian to look at the map. Maybe, if we're lucky, Brian told her. He held one side of the U.S. map down while Diane traced their most likely route with a highlighter. How far is it? I've traveled a lot, but I've never gone this far. Mary Lou looked closely at the paper map. A little over 2,500 miles, I'm guessing, Diane said. She held a Sharpie in the other hand, which she used to make a careful dot on the map. These are possible stops to refuel or eat, Diane pointed out. If we drove non-stop, we'd be looking at about a day and a half, maybe 2 days to get there. That, of course, ain't plausible. Diane tapped her fondly on the shoulder. We have to get gas, get out and stretch our legs, stop to eat, etc. Even if we take turns driving, stops will extend our time. When we get to the mountain, we camp overnight, which, of course, adds another day. I see. Got it, Mary Lou said. On the way back, Diane continued, we might rent a couple of motel rooms. By then, we'll be tired enough to want a real bed. I've been busy this week making phone calls and checking things out in order to plan. Some layover spots are on the route. Mary Lou traced her gaze along the route Diane was marking and whistled. Geez, how many states are we going through? 10 states, including Washington State and our own state of Tennessee, Brian answered instead of Diane. It's generally northwest from here by interstate and highways. See here? Diane pointed at the top left of the map. That's where we're going. Mount St. Helens is near Seattle, Washington. She drew a circle around their destination. We got the smaller maps of each state, so we have more detail where we're driving in case we need to detour for traffic. Okay. Well, at least we shouldn't get lost, Mary Lou said with relief. I have never been west of Hot Springs, Arkansas, so I have no clue about any other territory. Don't worry, we'll be fine, Diane told the teen. I've got it covered. A portable CB radio is now installed in John's car. Even if we're separated, we can talk back and forth since Brian's already has a radio in his car. There's maps here for both cars. Foolproof, Mary Lou smiled. I like it. She glanced at the back of the blue hatchback at the bundle with a red sparkle glowing on a pure gold chain wrapped around it. The spear isn't going to like it. Shh, not here, not now. Kenneth walked up behind her. That infernal piece of crap doesn't need to know anything, he said. The car's packed. We are ready to go on our adventure. Cool. Thanks, Ken, Mary Lou said brightly. You're welcome, by the way. Your packing would go easier if you didn't try to bring everything plus the kitchen sink with you. He winked at her good-naturedly. It really isn't that much, Mary Lou smiled as Diane folded the maps up and put them in the car. Brian grabbed his stack and gestured at the vehicle. They were ready. Mary Lou found herself looking forward to the trip. Even the ominous peals of thunder in the background didn't dampen her spirits as they departed. She glanced up curiously, but didn't see a threatening storm, just a partly cloudy sky. Mary Lou missed Carly and Rachel for a brief moment, neither of whom were with them this time. She thought back to Carly's present snide attitude. It's just as well she has to stay behind for school, Mary Lou thought. Something's going on in her head that she isn't saying. Poor Rachel, though. She's close to a total nervous breakdown. Rachel doesn't need to be anywhere near the Spear of Chaos right now. She's totally losing it. And who could blame her with everything we've been through? With Brian driving and Kenneth riding shotgun, Mary Lou had the back seat to herself, along with the blankets Ken had moved out of the trunk. With the long drive ahead, she watched the passing scenery for a while. The guys' voices slowly lulled her to sleep. The girl felt strangely safe with them in the car with her. It wasn't something she was used to feeling. She hoped it would last. A small niggle of foreboding, however, gradually crept into her subconscious. She sought to ignore it, but it grew stronger as the miles and the morning flew by. It hit her full on when they stopped at the Kentucky border rest area 4 hours later. Kenneth shook her awake. "If you need to pee," Kenneth said, "now's the time. We aren't going to stop again for a while." "Yeah, okay." Mary Lou rubbed her eyes and made her way to the busy women's restroom. It was clean and neatly painted. Much nicer than the Ohio rest areas I've seen on past trips, she thought to herself gratefully. This bathroom is well kept and maintained. Kudos, Kentucky. She thought back to some of her family's previous road trips for Masonic events or visiting family out of state. Those were all for fun. This time it's deadly serious. And they just think I'm off on a camping trip with my girlfriends before I start college. For real, they are clueless. She giggled to herself. Mary Lou felt free, like she had flown away from the bird coop at last. Don't get cocky, she admonished herself mentally. We have a long way to go, and that spear has a habit of making monkeys out of us just when we think we've got it all figured out. She shook her head as she washed her hands. The mirror showed she looked tired, more worn around the edges than she wanted to admit. All the mess of the last several months had taken its toll on her, too. I can't quit, though, she admitted to herself. I made a promise. I'll stick by it, wherever it leads. I just hope this new plan works. If it doesn't, we're just screwed. The direction Mary Lou's thoughts had taken proved prophetic. She arrived at the cars to see Brian swearing and waving his hands around more animatedly than usual. His light brown hair bobbed up and down as he bounced on his toes. He was with Diane, who spoke with the owner of a gray Subaru backed into John's car. Uh-oh. Mary Lou's heart seemed to sink into her gut. She joined Ken, who stood back a little from the carnage. How bad is it? Not as bad as it could be, Kenneth pointed. Dented bumper and rear fender. No tire damage. It's drivable, but will be delayed because there has to be a police report. Crap. Question? Mary Lou eyed the situation dubiously. What? Kenneth examined her. He didn't usually hear that unsure tone of voice from her. How's the cop gonna react to a wolf and a coyote in the car when he gets here? Mary Lou glanced worried at the 2 dogs in the car. Would the cop notice what they are? Would the spear strike out in some way? I guess we'll find out in a few minutes. Brian already called them. They're not far away. Kenneth shrugged. Well, that's something at least. I'll sit with the canines while we wait. There's nothing for me to add since I didn't see anything, Mary Lou told him. The ominous feeling increased when she got in John's car. She could sense the spear making an effort to reach out through its bindings. She mentally distanced herself as best as she could from its influence while willing it still. It wasn't long before the officer arrived to take the report, but the longer they stayed at the rest area, the more the cloud cover increased. The afternoon began to grow dark as another officer arrived. The sky went from partly cloudy to mostly cloudy with wind and thunder. The sky seemed to reflect her mood. She thought she saw sinuous moving shapes in the clouds above. Lightning struck to the west in the direction they were heading. "Great," she muttered. "Looks like we might be driving through some storms. I didn't think the weather forecast was calling for bad weather. It just said partly cloudy." She glanced at the spear. Its hate was palpable, but damped down. Her anger flared at the same time thunder rolled. "Stop it!" she growled at the inanimate object. John and the coyote moved restlessly. They could feel it too. "If I could, I'd break you with my bare hands," she told it angrily. The second officer walked close and peered into the car. His eyes widened in surprise and then narrowed. He turned to Diane and Brian, pointing into the vehicle. "I'm not getting out and leaving them in here," Mary Lou whispered. "You got a permit for a wolf?" the officer asked Diane. "Officer, I'm a park ranger, and yes, but it's part dog. It's okay. See the blue eyes? It's not a full wolf. He's got his rabies tag and ID on." John moved slightly where the oversized orange collar Diane had thought to place on him that morning would show. He allowed his tongue to loll out the side of his mouth in what he hoped was a friendly or casual expression as he wagged his tail. "I don't like dogs myself," the officer glared. "I'm a cat person." His gut told him something was wrong, but they didn't appear to be doing anything illegal. An inexplicable urge in his trigger finger made him want to draw his weapon. "Do it. Kill them. Kill them all," a mental hissing voice said. It startled the officer out of the sudden stupor that threatened to draw him in like a nightmare. The officer jumped back from the car. With eyes wide, he shook his head clear. No one expected a 10-year veteran of the police force to want to randomly kill a bunch of kids. What was wrong with him? "Maybe it's time to retire," he muttered to himself where the others couldn't hear him. "Coward," the voice hissed. "Fuck you," the officer thought back at whatever was causing his thoughts to spiral out of control. He took hold of himself and returned to his cruiser to allow his coworker to finish up. After all, it was just a fender bender, and they were from out of state. "Not my problem," he said out loud to hear something besides that negative voice wanting to worm its way into his mind. A few splatters of raindrops fell on the windshield of the police cruiser. "A good hot cup of coffee would be great about now," he said aloud. Following his fellow officer out of the parking lot, the policeman left to go about his patrol. He forgot about the group of young folks and their weird-looking dogs. The travelers pulled out, going the other direction. Heading north on Interstate 24 to hit 57 north, they went west on Interstate 64 to the Illinois-Missouri border at St. Louis. They stopped again at a small town outside the city to refuel and switch drivers. Under cover of night, nobody noticed the odd-looking canines who got out to take advantage of the rest to eat, drink, and relieve themselves when the humans did. This time, to everyone's relief, it was an uneventful stop. It gradually warmed as they continued west, steadily eating up the miles. Kenneth switched to Diane's car to give her a break from driving, and Mary Lou took over Brian's car so he could nap. It had been a long 18 hours. They were barely halfway to their goal. Dawn broke where the group headed west through Kansas. Clearing cloud cover barely obscured the sunrise behind them, except for a persistent small storm that seemed to stick with them as they went. They found mostly small towns and quick stops in Topeka, Kansas, on Interstate 70 to the state line. "What boring countryside," Mary Lou had given the wheel back to Brian. She eyed the perfectly flat expanse of scenery on both sides of the road. Ahead of them, the road stretched to a tiny pinpoint at eye level where the ground abruptly ended and the sky began. The land was dotted with miles of crops peeking up from the dirt where it was newly planted. An occasional house poked its roof up out of the fields with a handful of trees around it. "There's not much out here except farmers' fields," Brian agreed with his friend. "This is tornado country, too. One of these days I'm going to come out here and be a storm chaser." Mary Lou turned a critical eye on Brian. "That's just insane," she laughed. "Why would you deliberately seek out trouble? It's bad enough trouble looks for us when we aren't looking for it." "You don't want to have any room for talk, girl," he said. "You're the one with thunderstorms want to follow you around. You were the one that might bring trouble down on us out here." "Too true," Mary Lou sighed, eyeing the sky. Darkness did seem to follow her around lately. Heavy gray clouds were piling up in one area, whereas in most of the sky, simple cotton balls of scattered white puffs sat overhead. One particularly dark cloud was with them persistently. "The prevailing winds blow to the east, but the one above us looks like it's going west. What gives?" Mary Lou wondered aloud. Aranel was not inclined to explain herself to the travelers below. She preferred to remain unobtrusive and unremarked within the cloud cover. The storm elemental was ethereal and camouflaged among the chaotic winds she rode. She carefully hid herself so that the people looking upward might only remark upon the interesting dragon-shaped cloud she pretended to be. Aranel's attention centered on the girl herself. The sudden storm Mary Lou had raised the summer before had brought Aranel out of her mountain territory and into the valley to investigate. The dragon stayed near to watch the unusual activity because most humans never wielded the dominion power God had given them. As she soared through the sky, over Mary Lou, Aranel savored the memory of the unusual amount of electricity that had crackled beneath her talons when she rode that previous storm. Arnell controlled the ever-threatening chaos of the weather patterns as one of the elder powers assigned to protect and guard. This weather was different, however, and the storm dragon was concerned. Something else dark, ancient, and threatening was at play. It was sending the girl's gifts into an uncontrolled spiral. Aranel, as the dragon closest to the object causing the problem, would be held responsible by the Prime Creator to keep the weather in check. She was ready, waiting. Something else almost as sinister drew the storm dragon's attention. Unseen, sentient entities were nosing around the edges of the darkness, hateful, creeping things that sought the source of tainted power. They, however, were creatures born of chaos and death, unable to cross the veil because their very existence was anathema to the natural order. Nephilim, demon-kind, hateful spawn of Septilim and fallen watcher angels. Arnell hissed at the thought. In response to her anger, thunder rumbled around her. Demons were always present when blood and death threatened, like sharks circling their prey ready to feed. Almost as if the spear sensed the dragon's attention, the hate within it fought its bonds harder as they drove on into Colorado. Restless, the coyote shifted in his sleep in the back of the car. When he stretched, the necklace slipped free of the unholy artifact. The flat, bland terrain behind them turned to rolling grasslands as they journeyed onwards. Mary Lou half expected to go through mountains once they got to Colorado, but Denver was relatively flat. Instead of heading west into the Rocky Mountains, they turned north on the bypass around Denver. They were still in Denver, having followed the signs toward Cheyenne, Wyoming, when the spear's influence, freed unnoticed from its bindings, found fertile ground for chaos. Traffic had begun to back up, so the two cars were forced to slow for the traffic in front of them. Drivers around them began honking. Brian was getting agitated, and Mary Lou felt oddly annoyed by the noise. "Shut up already, jeez," Mary Lou shook her head. What the heck is the issue? The interstate is going down to 2 lanes, Brian told her. Someone behind them honked. In response, Brian slowed down further. Piss off! He yelled out the window. The CB radio crackled with truck drivers talking. Mary Lou tried to make out what was going on. Ahead of them, Diane moved over. She grabbed her CB and pressed the button. You guys okay back there? Brian grabbed the speaker and answered. Yeah, you got an eye on what it looks like up ahead? Can't see much, came the answer. I'll pull left and look. I'm right behind you, Brian affirmed. He put the mic down as traffic sped up. It's clear sailing ahead. Diane's voice crackled. She paused and started to get back over into their lane. Both drivers were looking behind them and noticed what was bearing down on them simultaneously. Oh, fuck! Brian yelled. Move, Di! Both drivers expertly spun their wheels and swerved into the marked-off lane next to them. They moved barely in time to avoid being crushed. An impatient driver in a blue SUV sped past them and cut off the tractor-trailer truck just ahead and to the right of them. The SUV failed to see that the off-ramp was full of cars at a dead stop, swerved over and hit the rear of a truck on the ramp. The semi-driver tried to swerve to miss the SUV but clipped its back. Pieces of the SUV bounced several yards down the interstate. Horrified drivers only had a moment to observe a child's car seat and pink lunchbox skitter past them on the pavement. The tractor-trailer jackknifed, went partly airborne, and rolled over several cars. The sudden stop and resulting explosion of somebody's gas tank caused several more vehicles to crash into the drivers ahead of them. Thick black smoke quickly blanketed the highway. Spine-tingling primal screams rang out at the crash site. Other horrified drivers sat frozen or exited their cars, checking for survivors. The air quickly smelled and tasted like burning gas and blood. By bare luck and skill, Diane and Brian avoided the pileup. Brian stopped his car, jumped out, grabbed his emergency kit, and ran to help. Mary Lou and Kenneth were close behind. It had been days. Ictathere tracked the scent of hate, corruption, and death. He located them amid blood and chaos. The daemon licked his chops eagerly. Greasy black smoke spiraled skywards to where he rode the winds just beneath the threshold of the storm dragon's territory. Drifting forwards, half in and half out of the physical part of existence, he opened his maw to take in the scent of suffering as it rose from the tangle of mangled metal and fire below. Delicious. His eyes sparkled with hunger. Weariness dragged at his limbs from his long chase, but he would not falter until the spear was in his grasp. Several prey creatures bolted from their vehicles toward the crash site, leaving fewer of them to guard the spear. A push of will brought him closer to reality's physical side, and he flowed into the smoke to hide his form. Embers floated from below into the sky, and no one noticed that two were descending rather than rising toward heaven. Ictathere's focus was shattered by a scream, higher than the rest with the taste of innocence behind it. He froze with the smoke coiling around him. Soft sobbing and the scent of terror oozed outwards. His gaze snapped behind him. A child. The demoni salivated. It has been so long. The young girl was trapped. The underside of her vehicle had bent. Straps held fast to her as she tried to wiggle free. The car behind her had rammed into the backside of the van before catching fire. Her mother slumped unconscious over the steering wheel. The flames inched closer by the moment. Mesmerized, Ictathere crept forward, drawing her terror and pain into himself, feeding on her life and soul. The baby girl's head snapped towards him, and she saw. She saw the evil coming for her. The child screamed so loud that it touched heaven, and the heavens responded. Lightning leaped from cloud to ground. Ictathier howled as a dragon's wrath blew a hole straight through his neck without killing him. The thunder that followed flattened him to the pavement with its pressure. A web of lightning crawled across the clouds as the enraged elemental dragon gathered her strength for another strike. Ictathier yelped with fear as rain poured down from the clouds above. It quenched the fire and tingled painfully across his skin. Another bolt narrowly missed his muzzle as he dove away from the road and into the ditch beside it. Even that proved perilous as water began sluicing from the roadway to the ditch where he cowered from the storm's fury. "Another day," Ictathier promised silently as he slunk, defeated from the wreckage in the road. "And I'll get you too, bitch." He thought hatefully at the silver form he could just barely make out, curled around the thunderhead above. "When I have the spear, I'll be unstoppable." Aranel let the daemon go. She hissed as he made the jump from physical reality to the space between. Since the innocents below were no longer under active threat from the daemon, the storm dragon turned her attention to putting out the fires and watching for more opportunistic incursions. She noted that the other shadows also retreated, having taken the warning of Aranel's swift punishment of the stronger daemon seriously. The girl below that had drawn so much of Aranel's interest crouched down and stared upward at the dragon that she could not see. Mary Lou hesitated. She had checked on the baby who was slung to the pavement. The infant was dead, a victim of an impatient parent. With tears in her eyes, she looked around for someone she could help. She heard the scream of the child in the van just before the lightning bolt rattled her bones. "Lightning never strikes twice," she assured herself, deliberately ignoring the fact that it had so she could make herself move. People needed help. She ran to the van, hoping the electricity crackling above them would stay in the sky. The van was locked, but the sliding door was crushed and partly open. It had gashes like something huge had clawed and scraped it. She squeezed into the opening and saw the terrified child and the unconscious woman. "Hey, lady, are you okay? Wake up!" she called out. There was no response. She pulled herself away and looked around for more help. Diane passed close by, supporting someone bleeding but on their feet. "Diane!" She was relieved when Diane turned around. "There's a lady dead or maybe unconscious in here with a baby. Can you check on her while I get this child out?" Before long, paramedics had the woman on a stretcher, loading her into an ambulance. This one was lucky compared to some of the other victims of the crash, Mary Lou thought. The child's mother finally responded weakly. Her name was Sharon, she told them, and tearfully asked about her child. Diane reassured her that her baby was only scraped up. The mother was too injured to hold her little girl, but Mary Lou came close with her so her mom could see her. "Sharon, do you have somebody we could call or maybe have come to get your baby?" Mary Lou asked. She looked at Diane. "Do they need to take the baby to the hospital with her mom? How is this normally handled, or by whom?" "Officer Dietz says her father's on the way. They ran the tags and called the family," Diane told her. "We'll wait with her since it seems you have a new friend." The little girl clung tightly to Mary Lou's neck for reassurance, still sobbing and hiccuping with the shock of having her world upended. Mary Lou hugged her, consoling her as best she could while they waited. Diane left to check on their people. Kenneth and Brian were still busy helping other motorists injured in the crash, so she returned to the car. When she opened the trunk to check on their canine companions, she saw the coyote standing over the spear, growling with the loosened bindings. "Some bitch!" Diane exclaimed. "No wonder," she said grimly over the cursed object. "Up to your same old tricks, old man." It was not a question. Wolfer's Spear of Chaos was too dangerous to move, but far too dangerous to let lie either. She shook her head as it reached out to her. Stop it! Diane gave the artifact a mental slap. Get out of my head! It recoiled in surprise as the force behind the ex-cop's response. The medicine man's training blended well with her natural grit and experience gained from serving her community as a patrol officer. The spear settled back, contemplating pushing her as she renewed its binding with the blood ruby. The mental grumbling quieted. Diane wasn't fooled. She knew it was only waiting for its next opportunity. Don't worry. We'll be out of here soon, she told it. 6 hours later, traffic was backed up for miles. The emergency responders cleared the wreckage enough for one lane of traffic to move. The group was eventually able to join the other drivers making their way onward toward their destination. They wondered silently when the spear would make its next attack as they continued across state lines into Wyoming. No one voiced their fears or suspicions as they didn't want to encourage the artifact to get any help. Their mood dampened by the horror they'd witnessed during the pileup in Denver, they rode on in somber silence. Still leading the way, Diane sat up straight and tensed in the driver's seat. Beside her, Ken sat half-turned to keep an eye on the still whispering artifact. They could both feel the palpable taint rolling off of it, making the ride uncomfortable. The spear quieted further as they pulled into the rest area of the Wyoming Welcome Station about 10 miles after crossing the Colorado-Wyoming state line. It was small and difficult to access. As she looked for a parking spot among the other travelers, Diane grabbed the CB. Anybody need a break back there? Diane's voice crackled over the radio in Brian's car. Affirmative, Brian replied. Mary Lou has been pestering for the last 20 minutes about a bathroom stop. 10-4. These dogs need to be let out. They're bound to be floating by now. Still stuck as a wolf, the professor turned a blue-eyed glare on his companion. Arrrrrrr, he declared. Who you calling a dog? Oh, it's worse than that, my furry friend. She grinned unrepentantly. I've got to put a leash on you. We don't need some jumpy cowboy to see you as anything but a dog. That officer in Kentucky was bad enough. Try to look small and tame. Diane turned next her attention to the coyote. You too, my friend. She pointed to the leashes in the back floorboard. Ken can take you to the bathroom. Keep a low profile, okay? People out here are more likely to know what you are than at our stops back east. All right, let's go, Ken said. Time's a-wastin'. He took the offered leashes and patted the coyote on his head. Brian pulled into a spot next to Diane and parked, allowing his stiff passenger to get out. Mary Lou watched them open the doors to let the professor and the coyote out as she stretched. The wolf had his ears down with his head and tail tucked. He was the very picture of misery. Is the professor okay? She asked. Diane snapped a leash on his collar. Yeah, he's just not happy. Mary Lou nodded. He doesn't look it. Brian chimed in. No, but at our other stops, we got away with just parking away from everybody and letting them out. However, this place is small on this wide-open field. Wolves and coyotes are native. Everybody has a gun out there, and they're dumb if they don't do to dangerous wildlife, he told her. He batted his door where she knew he kept his firearm. Makes sense, she said. We can't have somebody trigger-happy shooting them. I'm going to go visit the bathroom. You staying here? Yeah, I'll watch to make sure nothing happens while you're taking care of business. Go pee, and then you can watch over the cars while I go, Brian said. On it, Mary Lou replied as she walked off. She saw that the parking lot was mostly empty, despite Diane and Brian's concerns. Above her, the same gray clouds hovered over them that had been there the whole trip. They were low, thick, and ropey with curling serpentine edges that flowed in the mists above. At the near edge of it, streaks of rain fell in front of a distant clear blue sky. Freaky, she muttered. Maybe the spear is affecting the weather. The weatherman on the radio says no rain and clear sailing. She shook her head in wonder at the faint peal of distant-sounding thunder. I don't think he knows what he's talking about. Mary Lou entered the facility and found the ladies' room. Ha! She breathed a sigh of relief and entered. Ictathere crouched low in the deep shadow of the building at the rest stop as he also glanced overhead. Mindful of his last encounter, he was loath to show himself to the storm dragon that patrolled the sky above. Due to the taint emanating from one of their cars, the daemon had no trouble tracking their movements as they traveled. Ictathere lay in wait until the spear stopped moving, then made his jump to where it drew him. Careful exploration of his new surroundings told him that he should be able to claw his way through the veil to get to his prey. Ictathere's tongue snicked out, and he tasted the energy of the place. Fortunately for the daemon, mundane traffic in the physical realm created a ready exit. People full of intense emotions like anger or hate, greed, and lust stressed the barrier just enough. He sniffed out one of those torn places and formed a plan when he realized that the girl from earlier was separated and alone. He stalked her. I get you, distract, get spear, he whispered ominously. This is too easy. He smiled to himself. Ictathere flexed his claws in anticipation of drawing real blood from a hated human. Later, he promised himself, I will finish the job. His tongue slid across his misshapen black lips in hunger at the memory of hot, sweet, life-filled fluid from a fresh kill dripping from his fangs. Human cattle, I will feed on the marrow of your bones like the lioness after the hunt. Ictathere focused on his game of cat and mouse. I am the cat, he hissed in amusement at the direction of his own thoughts. Deadly, strike, cat. Come here, little tasty cow. Kill the queen, kill the hive, and the drones are easy picking. The daemon considered the other living shadows slinking around in increasing number. None of them dared challenge the Dramors and Ictathere. He showed his fangs, and they pressed back in fear. He then ignored them as beneath him. Seeing his opportunity, he started his attack. Ictathere came face to face with the girl. He looked at her from the astral side of the veil. Carefully, he pressed his weight against a weak point. To his satisfaction, the mirror he had chosen as his method of entry began to splinter beneath his will. He had only partly broken through when his prey looked up and noticed him draw shadow around himself to become solid. They looked at each other eye to eye. Ictathere felt the first pangs of fear when he finally saw her clearly. He realized that he may have miscalculated. However, it was far too late to formulate another plan. He pushed harder on the barrier until it gave way. He was through. Facing her in person, the daemon Ictathere crouched, growling as he fully recognized the danger she presented him. The girl was bright with spiritual energy barely contained by her physical form. The daemon gasped internally when he saw that she carried on her back folded into her aura, but he pressed his attack. Biting or clawing her was going to burn him. He went for her in deadly earnest anyways, the game forgotten. Ictathere thought back to the teachings of his own kind. Every daemon must know that once you start a fight with a human, you must finish the battle or die trying. If you abandon the fight, we will kill you ourselves. Humans cannot be allowed to learn that we can know defeat. Mary Lou squealed and jumped back, startled when the mirror in front of her shattered as she attempted to wash her hands. When she saw the dark shape materializing from the wrong side of the mirror, she instantly remembered Ulfr's and Sierra's encounters. The girl stepped back and crouched into a fighting stance. "Damned spear constantly bringing nightmares down on our heads," Mary Lou muttered. Before it could jump on her, she grabbed a large piece of the mirror off the floor. When it leaped, the girl came up with the sharp edge slashing across its belly as she did a foot sweep to bring it down. It howled with pain, but darted aside, avoiding a fall. Forgetting the girl's allies outside, Ictathyr howled again in an angry, blood-curdling scream. But again, he didn't go down when she hit him. He lashed out, swiping at her. Reflexes born from months of martial arts training barely allowed her to dodge the strike. Porcelain shattered as the sink took the brunt of the blow. Seconds seemed like forever as the daemon pressed his attack, and Mary Lou fought back. She was conscious of her friends nearby and slowly backed towards the door, giving ground to the black abomination in front of her. Tile shrieked. Sparks flew as she ducked. The cement wall gave way beneath the monster's claws, and it snarled in frustration. "What in hell are you?" she demanded. Mary Lou again knocked it back. The light flickered in the building as thunder boomed outside. Rain pounded the roof. It made Ictathyr back away and involuntarily look upward. Their fight had gotten the attention he'd hoped to avoid. The storm dragon was angry. Ictathyr briefly considered a retreat, but he knew he wouldn't be able to stop the chase. If he failed, there would be nothing left of him, since his kind showed no mercy or patience with any sign of weakness. The noise also got other unwanted attention. Loud voices sounded over the thunder. Diane burst through the door. Taking one look at the situation, Diane held her hand up and shouted a word in a language that the teen didn't understand. The medicine man's student darted forward and touched the creature. It howled again in pain and convulsed on the floor among the scattered bits of the mirror and sink. "Thank God!" Mary Lou was glad when it finally turned tail and ran back the way it came. "It's gone." Mary Lou bent over trying to catch her breath, shaking from the adrenaline rush. She looked up at Diane, grateful that her friend had come when she had. "You're bleeding." Diane pointed to her hands and her shoulder. "Looks like it got you. We need to get you checked out and see how bad you wounded." "It's mostly my hands from the broken glass. I need a bandage. The other is just a scratch. It didn't get me solid, but—" "What was that thing?" Mary Lou asked in confusion. "A spirit," Diane told her grimly. "Used to be a werewolf in life, judging by its canine appearance. Now it's a shadow of itself, literally. You could have used magic against it yourself if you'd known its nature. Any number of blessed objects or even holy water and smudge incense smoke also works." "I need to file that information away for later," Mary Lou said. Diane nodded in agreement. "For now, it's gone. Let's get you out of here. Do you need help?" "No, I'm ambulatory," the girl answered, despite the tremors from fading adrenaline. "Good. We need to get out of here as soon as possible." Diane opened the door. Outside, Ken and Brian took one look at the blood on her and ran in two different directions. Brian headed to his car while Kenneth lunged for the ladies' room door to barge inside. "What the?" Kenneth exclaimed. He scanned the bathroom for an intruder. He noticed the broken mirror and sink, as well as the large rips in the wall. "Oh, hell nah! Here we go again!" He stalked angrily out of the women's restroom. "Excuse me?" An older lady in white slacks and a cardigan sweater glared at him. Behind her, a balding man stood beside a Buick smoking a pipe. "You're excused," Kenneth quipped. "You might want to try the men's room. That bathroom's closed for remodeling." He left her blinking at his retreating back. "If I didn't know better, I'd have thought you got sideswiped by a bear," Brian told Mary Lou. He carefully examined the shallow parallel cuts. "It looks like it's got some kind of black dirt in it. but it's not washing out. Brian and Mary Lou stood behind the car while he cleaned her wounds. The medic wore a pair of latex gloves while attempting to stop the bleeding in the shoulder wound. Rain was still falling lightly. Brian glanced warily at the sky, then the building, and back at his patient. Not good. Diane glared at the back of the car, where the spear still lay. The professor and Coyote were quiet, but not distressed. I don't think this time that the spear did it. At least not directly. Okay, why do you think that? Kenneth asked. I agree with you, but I want to hear your thoughts on what attacked her. And did you see anything? Oh, yes, Diane replied. It was a shadow walker, one of the old ones, what you'd call a demon or a dark spirit. Brian stopped scrubbing his friend's wounds to stare at Diane wide-eyed. Mary Lou grimaced and nodded. Yeah, she said, it certainly looked like one. It was big, black, werewolf-looking thing with the long claws and 4 long fingers, red eyes, sort of dog-like, she told Brian and Kenneth. Remembering the incident at the dam, Kenneth looked back at the building with the ruined bathroom. The spear is certainly responsible, in my opinion, but it didn't attack this time. Oddly, it didn't. This craziness seems to be something else, something we haven't seen before. Whatever caused it, we have enough troubles already. We don't need more, Mary Lou said between gritted teeth as Brian dabbed and poked at her injury. Just one more thing to keep aware of. Also, stay in groups till we can figure out how to get rid of the Spear of Chaos. Diane folded her arms over her belly as she watched Brian continue to swipe at Mary Lou's shoulder. Finally, he sighed in exasperation. It's still not coming clean. I'm going to bandage it for now. I can clean it again after we clear out of this place in case whatever did this comes back. We should get the spear away from here. Brian stared closely at his friend's cuts. It may need some mild debridement. What does that mean? Mary Lou asked. To use a sharp surgical-grade blade to cut away contaminants or dead tissue, he told her. A knife? Mary Lou grimaced. No thanks. I'm sure it will be fine. She shrank away at the idea. Shaking her head, she allowed Brian to finish bandaging her up, and then she grabbed her drink and got into the car. I'm ready whenever you guys are. Mary Lou sighed in relief when they pulled out and back onto the road. As the miles rolled by under their wheels, she fell asleep. A low whine warbled in the depths of Ictathyr's throat. Thin trails of ooze dribbled from his scorched shoulder. His somewhat amorphous flesh had healed wounds from glass and porcelain easily enough, but the lightworker's touch? He dared not even lick his wound, lest his tongue start to dissolve as well. Hissing and snickering followed him. Tiny slithering things followed in his wake, licking up his fallen essence. Several had already vanished, gone to report presumably. Larger demoni flickered through the mists in the space between, waiting, watching, scornful and hungry. He snarled savagely at the scavengers on his trail. Intimidated, they scattered, only to return as soon as he turned his back. Weakened and slowed, he never saw the blow coming. A massively scaled tail lashed across his chest, throwing him to the ground. The daemon was already on top of him before he had bounced twice. A massive clawed paw pinned his chest to the ground. The Lord Jebral has waited long enough. I find you here with the touch of light upon you, and no spear. The Urgamach grinned delightedly and laughed. Poor thing, it purred mockingly. So terribly wounded. Its claws shifted a couple of inches deeper into his flesh as it spoke. Looks like you started a fight you couldn't finish. You were to retrieve the spear, not play tag with light workers. As the larger daemon spoke, acid dripped down from the Urgermach's jaws onto Ictathir's face. Ictathir bared his fangs back at his tormentor. No one said anything about the damned spear being guarded. Excuses. Any true daemon would be able to steal from mortals. It wasn't mortal. Sheathed in skin, perhaps. But it wasn't mortal. The Dromorzen gasped out. Perhaps. Perhaps not. It doesn't really matter. Sooner or later, others will learn that you failed. When that happens, the Lord Gibril and I will be the least of your worries. Finish the job. Ictathir laughed. The Lord Gibril will have to get used to disappointment. I will be gone before I get my hands on the spear with this taint of light burning through me. The Urgermach grinned mockingly. Is that all? Easy enough to solve. Jaws wider than Ictathir's waist, with serrated fangs to shame a shark's bite closed on his collarbone. With a savage yank, it took half of his chest, narrowly missing beheading him, and threw his arm to the scavengers. Ictathir screamed, howled, and cried. The Urgermach turned to address their audience. This one is mine. No one kills until I give the order, or I will eat you myself. Turning back to Ictathir, it spoke. Finish your task, or I can throw your scraps to the lowest denizens of the pits, if you prefer. The scavengers grew bolder after the Urgermach released him and jumped out of range. Ictathir snapped at them. They giggled at him and simply hopped out of reach. Wounded and weary, they knew well he hadn't the strength to pursue them. He was losing essence and strength. Despite the order not to kill Ictathir, the opportunity to feed on loose bits of him or latch on like lice was too great a temptation for the smaller demoni. The Dromorzen snapped at several more tiny scavengers, who gained the courage to bite and run. His own thirst to feed had become overpowering. Too weak to jump between realms with his wounds draining his strength, Ictathir settled down to wait in stillness. Lulled by Ictathir's unresponsiveness to small nips, the scavengers grew bolder. They drew in closer until he managed to snap up a couple of them, after which they scattered to watch from a distance. The meager amount of dark essence he gained from eating the scavengers would sustain him until he reached Earth again. A proper kill in the mortal realm would help him regenerate his missing limb. There were plenty of corrupt mortals who would make a tasty and safe snack. I'm coming for you, little girl, the demon snarled into the nothingness. Next time, I'll have your heart for dinner, even if it kills me. The threat sounded hollow, even to him, but his rage and his hunger firmed his resolve. He hissed and slaked his tongue over his shadow-colored lips. At least, he told himself, there is none of the hated light here to burn me. He settled down into stillness again. No outward sign showed that he plotted his next moves. Several hours later, Mary Lou awoke, stiff, groggy, and with her shoulder throbbing painfully to every heartbeat. Where are we, Brian? She peered out at the terrain passing by. Or she tried to. Full dark had passed them by some hours ago. We're near the Utah border, heading west, Brian responded. How long was I asleep? She asked, trying to shake herself awake, hissing as she jostled her shoulder. Brian kept his eyes on the road, but a frown pulled the edge of his mouth at the sound. 6 or 7 hours? It's just about dawn, Brian told Mary Lou.
Owie,
Mary Lou complained as she moved. Are there any rest areas or towns where we could stop? You'll have to grab a bush if you need a pit stop, Brian answered. Or in this case, a blade of grass. Or maybe you can hide behind a cactus, because there's nothing out here but flat desert and moonlight.
I'm thirsty.
She laid her head back. She worked her mouth. It felt like dry cotton.
Okay, I suppose.
Okay, what? Brian asked.
Whatever.
Mary Lou felt too tired to move. In response, Brian reached for the CB radio. Ken, we need to call a halt. Mary Lou isn't making much sense, and I want to take another look at her wounds. 10-4, came the immediate and sharp response. Both cars headed for the shoulder as they slowed. By the time Brian stopped, Mary Lou was almost asleep again. He turned the light on in his car, then jostled her back awake. Come on, you need to wake up. Talk to me, okay? I'm going to check on your shoulder, clean your wounds, redress them. We don't want them to fester.
Okay,
Mary Lou said, nodded assent. What's your name and birthday? Brian asked her while he dug into the first aid kit for gauze, tape, and sanitizing scrub.
You already know that,
she muttered. Just checking that you do at the moment, he quipped.
Mary Lou, July 29th.
Ow! She gasped and jumped in pain when he touched her. Brian pulled up her sleeve and also gasped. Oh, hell no! No way!
What?
The teen was suddenly wide awake. The throbbing in her shoulder seemed to get more intense as she focused on it. Brian reached for the radio again. Ken, Diane, I may need some help back here. This wound looks pretty ugly. Comin', Diane's voice crackled over the radio. Brian's normally cheerful face was grim as he greeted his friends. She should be bleeding yellow and pink pus if it were infected normally. This stuff looks like she's got an ink stain rather than a wound.
We had better do something about it ourselves. There ain't doctors here to fix it.
Kenneth looked around with a frown. Thunder rumbled distantly, and the wind picked up. The smell of an impending storm cut through the scent of sun-baked fields and dust.
There's rain moving in, so we have limited time. That could make it more difficult.
Can you hurry? Kenneth asked. Probably not. This isn't going to be an easy patch and run. I think Mary Lou is in real trouble here, Brian responded. Mary Lou felt dizzy and disoriented.
What can we do?
She slurred. You're going to have to get out so I can clean your shoulder properly, Brian told her. I can't get to you well enough at this angle. Without the strength to object, she allowed herself to be helped to her feet. Mary Lou found that her knees didn't want to support her weight as she was led to the front of the car. Changing position made the disorientation worse, and she found she could barely see. Nausea threatened to take hold.
Should we take the spear out, then lay her down in the hatchback?
Diane looked dubiously at the other car.
I'm moving that thing, all right,
Kenneth declared as he gently moved beneath Mary Lou's good arm.
Let's put her on the hood. We can use a towel since the engine is hot, but we don't need to make things any worse by getting the old man involved.
The trunk would be easier, but that's a good point. Diane nodded. What do you want us to do, Brian? Well, I'm going to debride this, Brian told her. It has to drain. Hopefully before the infection goes systemic, if it's not too late. Then let's get it done, Kenneth said, his mouth drawn into a hard line. Brian pulled the knife and antiseptic out of his medkit. Hold her down. This is gonna hurt. Kenneth shifted his grip and propped the girl carefully on the clean towel that Diane laid out on the car. He gently supported Mary Lou to keep her from slipping or jostling Brian when he approached with the knife. Kenneth caught his breath as he got a good look at the wound Brian uncovered. Oh, my God! Kenneth blinked at it and readjusted, so he had a firmer grip.
Stay still, Mary Lou, Kenneth told her. We're gonna have to get this shit out of your shoulder the hard way.
All she could see above her was the lightning sky and Ken's blurry face. It felt like the world had begun to spin around her, and she couldn't tell which way was up. She lost sense of herself and where she was inside her spinning head.
I feel dizzy, she told them. Everything's weird.
Brian examined the wound closely with gloved hands. It was hot and swollen to the touch. Normally an infected wound might have red streaks down the arm, but he could see a web of ink-colored veins. The flesh around the slashes from her attacker had a gray discoloration.
Damn it, Brian said softly. It looks necrotic.
And, Diane interjected from beside Brian,
there's no telling how much supernatural dirt was left behind. Debridement may not be enough to save her. Shush, Diane. We're not losing Mary Lou,
Brian told her firmly.
Let me concentrate.
We damn well aren't.
Get on with it. Do it now. Panic later.
Kenneth shifted his grip to hold Mary Lou down a little tighter. She wiggled under his hands in response.
Stop that, he told her. Don't you die on me.
Vague but familiar whispers slipped into Mary Lou's thoughts as her friends tried to help her. They became more insistent.
He has you helpless, little girl, they said into her mind. He's on you. Remember the last time? He promised he'd never do it again. And yet, here you are. This time he wants to bite you, hurt you, and to make you cower.
No, Mary Lou gasped. Ken did nothing wrong. He wants to fix it. Mary Lou fought back against the spear's influence. Get away from me, Ulfur, she thought back as the spear laughed. It responded.
You can't stop this. You can't hide your fear from me. I remember how this goes. You are tainted, stupid, and crazy. A used plaything. An ugly dog. I am already in you, and you won't be rid of me.
The pain hit, and with it, so did her PTSD. Mary Lou screamed and lost any remaining sense of what was happening to her. Her scream was nearly drowned in a loud peal of thunder as a lightning bolt flashed in the sky above her head. The wind began to howl around the edges of the cars. Icy wet needles from the clouds threatened to become a downpour. Kenneth and Diane practically sat on top of her trying to hold her still. Mary Lou fought them with every ounce of strength her spinning head and spreading demon taint allowed. But Kenneth was stronger. He determinedly held on to her. The response from Mary Lou's gift of weather working to the confused suggestion from the spear that she was being raped was catastrophic. She resisted further. Tumbleweeds began blowing across the road and piling up against the cars, which blocked the weeds' steady progress with the wind. Diane heard a hissing sound like 1,000 rattlesnakes and looked over to her left where the sound was coming from. Tumbleweed by the hundreds had begun to dance. They spiraled in a circle along the ground, and a sudden cold bolt of intuition made her look upward. The clouds above them had turned a sickly gray-green and were moving at right angles to one another. Overhead, the dark cloud that had followed them from Tennessee started rolling and spinning. A thin needle-like finger began to spin out of the cloud practically over the top of their heads. The newborn tornado reached the ground not 50 yards from the cars. The tail swerved their direction, hesitating for a moment. Diane started to shout a warning, but her voice was lost in another peal of thunder so loud it rattled the car's windows. They all pulled Mary Lou with them onto the ground, with nowhere else to go. The group looked up just in time to see a white and purple serpentine shape emerge from the clouds. Aranel was still with them when the girl's panic, overlaid with Damon Taint, yanked the weather patterns out of the storm dragon's grasp. She rode the lightning, keeping it from hitting the humans below. However, when the twister formed, she knew that she would have to break the rules and show herself to save them. The old dragon proudly bore the sigil of a master of the winds on her wing. Her oath to the Prime Creator to protect the non-flyers in her territory drove her to act quickly. She would explain her actions later. As the whirlwind moved toward the small group beneath her, Aranel insulated herself around the funnel. The dragon wrapped her tail around its base and yanked hard to send the tornado careening harmlessly across the plain. The humans surrounding the wounded weather worker stared at the dragon dumbfounded. She arched her neck and spread her wings, grounding and absorbing the lightning that streamed from the cloud to the ground and back again. Arnell centered her gaze on the one who bore the mark of Coyote's protection and spoke into her mind. That one is beyond mortal medicine. Taint must be burned out, root and branch, before it spreads. As the daemon fled, so too will what he left behind. A mighty leap took Aranel back within the clouds. The shaman now understood what needed doing. The storm dragon could only hope that what little intervention she had been allowed would be enough. The dragon kept the worst of the storm off of them as Diane and Brian worked on Mary Lou. The spear, in the presence of one of the ancient elemental powers, drew into itself and stilled. Even it didn't dare raise the ire of an elemental dragon. The dragon says we need to pray. Let's do this. Diane drew energy as she had been taught, through the great spirit of the divine. She laid hands on the wounds as Kenneth prayed beside her. When she focused on her sight, a sickly green overlay permeated her friend's shoulder. Slowly it faded under her chocolate brown hands as her spiritual light burned the darkness. The wound began oozing dark fluid, and Brian helped it along by applying pressure to express it where he'd cut her. Finally, they were satisfied. That's enough, Diane said and wiped the sweat on her brow. I can't do any more for now. I agree, Brian said. We're just dang lucky, I guess, that we have friends in high places. He eyed the clouds above them. The dragon was nowhere to be seen. The storm had abated. It appeared to him like a normally overcast morning. There was no sign that anything had happened other than his friend, who stirred weakly. Piles of tumbleweeds still bounced and rolled like restless, woolly sheep wandering across the deserted landscape. Kenneth brushed a tendril of hair off Mary Lou's face as she blinked at him, trying to clear her vision. You okay? We need to get going, he said gently. I think so, she told him weakly. What happened? You freaked out, he said. Then shit went crazy, and a really big lizard showed up who likes you, evidently. Lizards are cute. I used to play with the skinks that hung out in the flower beds at Grandma's house, she said. Not that kind of lizard. He smiled with relief. She sounded more like herself. But never mind. If you are feeling up to getting on your feet, we can get you cleaned up, get some breakfast, and be back on the road. We are in the home stretch of this trip. If Mr. Uber Badass Undead Spear keeps quiet, we might make it in one piece. I've had more than enough adventure to do me for a while. However, the spear stayed silent, biding its time for the remainder of the trip. It didn't dare cross the dragon that it could still sense watching for any misstep. Aranel soared above and in the clouds. She stayed with them all the way to the mountain which had so devastated Washington State only a handful of years before. Yeah. Mary Lou, yeah, might have been in a little bit of trouble. I mean, getting infected by a demon sort of makes things bad on one. They don't go so well, I reckon. And, hello to everybody else out there. If I have not had the chance to say hello to you yet, this chapter was a very long chapter. In fact, it is the only chapter we'll make it through tonight because I try to go for about an hour and a half or so, and it's been an hour and 25 minutes. Long chapter. Um, but yeah, let's see. What have we had happen? We've had Damon that shows up, Ictathier. We have Oronel, the nice dragon, which, hey, I will take a dragon's assistance any day of the week. And so it kind of cracks me up that we're going to Washington State and Mount St. Helens. So born and raised in Washington State. Uh, been to Mount St. Helens quite a number of times. In fact, I was in Washington State when Mount St. Helens erupted. Now, I was a little too young to remember it, but I was there, not on Mount St. Helens, just the state. So I like that they are going west to Mount St. Helens. It's a great place for them to be. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you enjoyed the reading this evening. If you missed any of it, all of it, some of it, none of it, whatever the case may be, the recorded chapter will be up on my YouTube channel and the Rumble channel a little bit later this evening for your listening and watching pleasure. Big thank you, of course, to our author, Mary Lou Wells, our editor, Kira Holiday. You know, Kira, I don't know if Mary Lou told you, my oldest daughter's name is Kira, spelled differently, because there's 8,000 ways to spell Kira. But my oldest daughter's name is Kira. Um, and thank you to you guys for coming along and spending some time here with me this evening. I hope you have enjoyed tonight's reading of Spear of Destiny. I will tell you, I am enjoying the heck out of this story. Really am. I like some of the mystical, aspects that get to come into it with, Ictathier and Oronel and or Aronel. I'm probably saying it wrong. I think you told me it was Aronel. Um, and getting to do some of the different voices are always fun for me as a voice actor. I like getting to do some of it.
And the evil voices are always ones that are fun to do, 'cause they are so memorable.
So I love the opportunity to do demons and demoni and uber demons and all of the like as we go in here. All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming along to join in this evening. I will be back again on Saturday where we will continue into Boom! Chapter 8. I say boom because the title of Chapter 8 is Boom. So we should be able to get out there and have some fun this Saturday. You never know. My wife is away this weekend. My oldest daughter, Kira, as I mentioned earlier, is away. I want to say they are going to be down in Florida for a cheer competition. My daughter's last year probably doing this. I mean, she's a junior in college. So she'll be joining the college team next year. So she won't be going probably to the competition in Orlando, but they're going down there this weekend, which means, as always, when the cats are away, the mice can play. we'll see. I may go a little bit longer on Saturday, so make sure you guys come along to join it. Tell your friends. You know they're gonna have a good time. Once again, thank you all so much. Make sure that if you have not read book one and you're like, what is this Spear of Chaos we keep on hearing about? The book is available on Amazon. If you're going through book two with me here and you're like, hey, I missed a whole bunch of it, guess what? You can buy the book on Amazon, or you can listen to the recordings on YouTube. Either way, we'll take it. If you do go listen to the recordings, make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, do all of those fun things. The algorithms love it when people comment and do those things. Um, uh, Honestly, Brian is probably my favorite character in here at the moment. Um, I don't know that he has any special abilities. I don't know that he has any other stuff like that. But um, as a veteran, seeing somebody who's an EMT and willing to run right into the mix of everything to help those in need, it puts a little warm spot in my heart. So I do think I like him the best at the moment. There are other good people in here, but I think he is my favorite so far. Ah, maybe you weren't expecting that answer. Um, all right, everyone. Once again, thank you so much. I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful evening, a fantastic week ahead, and I look forward to seeing you guys all again very soon. Have a wonderful night, everyone.